Hey, and welcome to another Homestead Tips video. This is Greg. When you first decide to start growing some of your own food, there's some things you got to consider. And there's some methods that you can do to help producing your own food a little simpler. Today we're going to be talking about raised beds versus in-ground versus container gardening. Now here on our little homestead, I actually use both in-ground and containers. Now why do I do that? And actually next year I'm going to be adding a raised bed. Each one of them have benefits over the other. In ground you don't have to water as often as you do a container, but in ground you've got to deal with more pests than you do in a container or a raised bed. Raised bed is going to normally be the most expensive because you've got to buy all of the stuff that goes in the raised bed. On our particular homestead, when I first got here, this place was covered with garbage. And I'm not kidding, it was covered with garbage. We hauled off, I cannot tell you how many trailers worth of just stuff. So we're actually having to remediate or improve a lot of our land. Now it would have been easier, it would have been quicker had I at the time had the money to put in raised beds and buy the field and everything and get a jump start. That's one of the benefits of a raised bed. You can control the materials that go inside that raised bed. It also kind of creates a barrier for several pests. Now, and we will show videos on how to improve soil, how to break up compaction, things like that. But as you're first starting out, a lot of times, those are things you got to consider. You got to consider the pH of your soil, which we will show a video fairly soon on testing the pH of your soil and why that test isn't actually perfect. But when you're doing it, you've got to look at it. Now, I cannot grow potatoes in my ground. I cannot grow carrots in my ground. I cannot grow onions in my ground. I do okay with tomatoes. I do okay with like the squashes. I do okay with several things like that. And I believe, I know I did. On the microclimates, I talked about how that the first year that I tried to raise corn, I put them in the wrong place and they didn't have enough sunlight. So our soil is in a rebuilding process. And I don't have the money to dump in it that some other people do, especially if they're doing it full time. So even though the soil's improving, it's gradual, it's slow. That's okay, you know? So when you're looking at it, you've got to determine. Now, on containers, I love containers. In permaculture, they have a term called Zone 1 garden. That's something that you're at every single day. It is where you put the things that are used most often. I use Zone 1 for my containers because it's right outside of our back door. I'm able to check it. Now, yes, containers, when it's not rained, I have to water them almost every single day. But that's where I put my herbs and my green onions and my little greens and stuff like that. You know, carrots and things like that, stuff that I cannot grow in the ground. But those are things that I can check on every single day and look at. My in-ground garden is my squashes, my tomatoes, okra, things of that nature, things that require much more room than a container can afford. We've gotten to where we don't grow corn here at all, which I love me some homegrown corn, but that's one reason I'm looking at doing a raised bed possibly next year, but their roots go so deep, I don't know if I can accomplish it. So, how do you garden? Do you use containers? Do you use raised bed? Do you do in-ground? I'd like to know. If you're in an apartment, containers going to be about it. If you're in a place where you may have to move, if you rent, you've got to find out if your landlord will allow you to put an in-ground garden. You've got to figure out your budget. So all of these things need to be considered. I hope you enjoyed it. Step by step, we're bringing rural back. Bye-bye.